Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Jiu-Jitsu Times podcast. Still in quarantine and still coming to you with the sweet jiu-jitsu content that you need to survive. I am, of course, Kevin Bradley, joined as always by my co-host, Kevin Gallagher, below me this time. And we have two very special guests for today's episode. One, Grappling Industries president, famed jiu-jitsu practitioner Dave Aguzzi, and the colorful fellow writer of the Jiu-Jitsu Times, multiple-time Fight to Win champion, brown belt, very colorful dude, Emil Fisher. Thank you both for joining us today. How we doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Stuck in quarantine for 11 days, but it could be worse, I imagine. I mean,
where are you stationed out of? Where are you living at right now?
I live in Montreal, like downtown Montreal, like in the Plateau area, so like the hipster region of Montreal, I would imagine.
First of all, Montreal is one of the most beautiful cities I've ever been to. I love that city. It's amazing.
It really is, actually. Like, when considering where to live in the world, I've thought of many places, but I don't really want to leave home, actually.
I went to Montreal one time when it was a GSP fought Nick Diaz, I think it was. And it was at the Canadian Center for my buddy's bachelor party. And I just remember thinking to myself, I never saw an ugly person. Like, every person on the street, every person you saw was just absolutely beautiful. It kind of led my mind to go to like dark places, like they kind of like round everybody up every 6 months, and like if you don't make the cut, they make you move to Toronto or something like that.
Well, you got Dave up there, so you know.
Yeah. People say that. People say we have the most beautiful women in the world for some reason.
Did you ever hear that any of the theories behind that had something to do with the furriers from Paris? The theory that I heard was this, and you can correct me if I know we're getting off base, but I just love to talk about Montreal, so like we'll go off for a second. And it's better than talking about the doom and gloom that's going on, and we're definitely not talking about anything. How do you think
Why not? Let's talk about Montreal.
So I heard that Montreal was a big furrier city for France.
It was, yes.
Being a furrier in those conditions in Montreal in that time back in, the 1800s or whatever was horrible, horrible life. So, but, the Parisians wanted their furs. So what the French did is they rounded up the most beautiful prostitutes they could find, and they sent them to go out to live in Montreal to be around, to keep the furriers happier. And that's the theory of why the women and all the people in Montreal are so beautiful, because it stems from that.
It's actually really close to the history of Montreal. Yeah.
Right.
Like we had fur traders, and then basically to populate the population over here in New France, which it was called at the time, Nouvelle France. We sent over what was called like the 100 King's Daughters, which were actually like really attractive women, possibly could have been prostitutes, who knows now. And they came to populate the city or the colony at the time. So I guess it's kind of close.
Your version is probably a little more PC.
Kev, you gotta shave the beard more often. You struck gold. I didn't know where that was going, but you struck gold.
That just dropped out of the sky. See, we know. We can relate.
Now, Emil, I know you and Dave have known each other a long time, and that you might have had some questions for him regarding, current state of affairs and all such things relating to the now not so thriving world of professional grappling. So I'll see the floor to you, bud.
What's up, Dave?
What's up, Emil?
So you reached out to me. You were saying that you got some stuff coming up that you want to talk to us about. What's going on, buddy?
Well, now there's not very much going on now, is there?
I mean, what's going to be going on?
You should have had me on a couple of weeks ago.
I'm not doing nothing, man.
Emil, you can't sit on this, man.
I've been in my room like watching old grappling videos for the last 2 weeks. That's about all that's going on.
Not as much has been going on now. I mean, even today I canceled more shows. I mean, every day feels like a cancellation of events or postponement.
How far out currently now are you canceled in advance?
Right now, like our next batch of events is May 23rd, but that's not very safe either. I mean, like I'm being realistic about it. We haven't canceled the May 23rd events yet because one of them is a collaboration deal with an expo.
Right.
So I have to cancel that kind of collaboration first before I can cancel that event, which allows me to cancel the other two events on that weekend. And then from that point, I'll probably get rid of the entire part of May. And then I'll start looking at June. The problem with June again is that we have our Worlds planned in there.
Right.
So we were expecting a couple of thousand people to drop.
I
into
was
Dallas for that.
gonna go. It's
Yeah.
in Dallas, right? I was gonna go out and compete in that this year.
And a lot of people have bought plane tickets, so there's a
Yeah.
little bit of extra. Like if we cancel it, then a lot of people get fucked over on the plane tickets. They have to rebook them and stuff like that. So that's the problem I'm facing right now, is that there's a couple of collaboration deals in the process in May and in June that I have to get rid of before I actually delete those events.
It's a shame, man.
And the problem with that is that those expos still believe that their events are going to happen.
Right.
I don't know what the deal is with that, but they
Are
believe.
you responsible for deposits and whatnot?
They cover a lot of that stuff.
Right.
In the expo collaborations. We had a big collaboration in Geneva that was supposed to be April 5th. Like the city was giving us in Geneva, they were giving us the venue, and then like kind of like the sheriff, lieutenant department of the police were giving us the medics and a couple of sponsors, and this was going to be our first Swiss event, and it was going to go like, it was drawing pretty well, but again, like the cancellations kind of forced that collaboration out, and then the government shut down, and the venue was like, you can still have the event if you want, but everyone in the crowd has to sit down 1 meter apart from each other. And I mean, that's not going to work.
I'm surprised they would even give you the go ahead to have the event.
I mean, that was 2 weeks ago. I mean, it's probably not available anymore.
Are you concerned with the fact that even if we get to a point fairly quickly where the world can resume in somewhat of a normal fashion, like people can go back to work, people can go back to doing normal things, that they'll get to a point where they're like, wow, I don't think we're going to be able to, this is great, but we can't really have an event where we have 500-600 people coming to a place. So we can't really do these big events anymore because the fear of social distancing will still be in place.
I've actually priced that into our model, to be honest. The first thing I'm thinking about is that first people will get to go back to work. That'll happen eventually, but it doesn't mean that jiu-jitsu gyms will get to start off right away. Right. When people get to go to work, it doesn't mean the jiu-jitsu gyms will open, which means I don't get to have a tournament yet. Once the jiu-jitsu gyms open, then it still doesn't mean I get to have a tournament yet. I believe that once the jiu-jitsu gyms open, then 4 to 5 weeks after that, I get to start having tournaments. Right. Because let's say Trump in the States was like, on Monday, everyone can go back to work. The gyms are not going to open on Monday. Realistically, it's not going to happen. And people are not going to compete in my tournament and spend money on it if they haven't trained for it. So there's those two things that have to be taken into consideration first, that gyms have to get back to normal. And then a couple of weeks later, once people have been training enough and people's income is actually there, because if they don't have the money, they're not going to compete either. They're going to focus on just doing jiu-jitsu instead of just competing as well. Right. So I think after all the gyms open, it'll still be 4 or 5 weeks before Grappling Industries gets to have it.
Yeah, man, the butterfly effect of all of this lack of activity is going to really start to billow out here in the very near future, the very not so distant future.
Well, I mean, I'm highly invested in the stock market as well for the past 2 years. So I've been paying attention to the stock market because every day on the futures, they've been giving a different headline clearly. Like today was the stimulus package. Tomorrow is going to be the unemployment numbers. Right. And I think like it still has a long way to go down. Right. Yeah, I just don't feel like this is a whole 2 week thing like they made it out to be at the beginning. At the beginning, it was like, oh, all we have to do is everyone has to stay in for 2 weeks. And I think like this says a lot about jiu-jitsu gyms right now as well, because a lot of jiu-jitsu gyms were saying if we have to close down for 2 weeks, we're going to have trouble reopening. But that is the best case scenario, the whole 2 weeks thing. Right. The 2 weeks thing is not realistic. So it's most likely going to be a month to 2 months, let's say. You could already see the criticism of Donald Trump saying April 12th, Easter weekend, we're going to reopen the society or the economy. It's most likely not going to happen. People have already criticized that.
No, I'm going with 2 months as a 2 months. Optimistic outlook, hopefully.
Probably 2 months. It looks like that's what China and Italy are going to take to.
But what world do we return to in 2 months is the question. I mean, it's not like we're going to be like, oh, cool, everything's cool again. Sweet, we just took 2 months off. Let's go right back into doing what we do every day. Like people are going to be broke. People are going to be creeped out.
So there's a lot of different things there too. Like my fiance was pointing out during the recessions like 9/11, 2001, 2008, and even March, April of 2018, like different types of recessions that I got to live through. Afterwards, people did jump into entertainment. Like people did leave their houses and go and spend money on entertainment. Vegas was booming, especially right now. If everyone's like cooped up inside their houses, and you see the number of people commenting online about how they can't wait to get to jiu-jitsu. Clearly, once the jiu-jitsu gyms open, I think people will rush to the jiu-jitsu gyms. I just don't think personally as many jiu-jitsu gyms will open as before, because I believe like 1 in 5 or even potentially like 1 in 4 could be closed down potentially, because
the ones that were a little more financially savvy and have money set aside or can exist, for a longer period of time.
Well, just to pivot off of that, you're also seeing a lot of gyms asking some of their patrons to not cancel membership and to sort of like ride out the storm as a sort of investment in having a space to train. If you like that gym enough, you will continue to train, like keep paying there, even if it's not open. You see that a lot.
Those claims, though, by those gyms were being made before the rest of the non-essential economy was shut down, though. Yeah. So at the beginning, they were like, support the gym if you can. Don't freeze it. Don't pause it. Pay if you can, or else there won't be a gym later. But then once the bars and the restaurants went down, and then once the barbers and the hair salons went down, and then everybody else went down, there's still a lot of people working. Don't get me wrong. Like there's still, like Emil was saying, that he's working at home right now. I'm not working. So yeah. So, I mean, there's clearly a lot of people working, but it's just that there's a lot of people not working. And those types of people are typically also the ones that are packing up the bases of the jiu-jitsu gyms.
Right. And jiu-jitsu is definitely a luxury. Anything you're doing something exercising, as much as you want to say it's essential, it's we might believe it's essential, but it's definitely a luxury item. And when you're starting to cut corners and you're thinking about ways to continue to pay the bills without income coming in, like one of the first things that's going to go is, unfortunately, I love my gym, but I have to cut this corner so I can keep living.
A lot of people are in that situation where they might love the gym, but their wife at the same time is like, do you really have to spend money on that, even if you're not using it right now?
That's the truth. It's 100% the truth.
Yeah, I mean, you can make up everything you want about it, but like spousal agreements, they're something important.
Emil, what do you think about some of these things, man? I know you've got some opinions, and you've got some directions you think this can go. And what are some of your opinions on shutting down like we're doing?
I mean, I don't know enough about this flattening the curve concept to speak intelligently about it, on record.
Right.
I have my thoughts on
this. Isn't on record, by the way. So there's not going to be that many people seeing this. Don't worry about it.
Hey, Kev, come on.
I'm gonna blow this podcast.
Thanks, Dave.
we got Dave Aguzzi on, baby.
I think regardless of whether or not it works, we're all fucked.
Yeah.
That's just what it comes like. Bottom line.
It's
whether or not this flattening of the curve works out, and whether or not we're able to slow the spread and mitigate death and all that good stuff, reduce the number of people that die from this illness, whether or not that happens, I think that the economy has been inextricably harmed already, and every day that goes by,
it gets worse and worse.
Things are shut down. It's going to get worse.
But
and I think that's just a fact. I think that
I agree with you on that. I agree with you that, like, yes, we need to get the economy going again. But I also think that we're not really understanding what's going to happen here in the near future. And I pray and hope that what's happening in Spain and what's happening in Italy don't come to the States, and we did enough to beat it in time. But just the way the numbers are looking, it doesn't seem like that's going to be the thing that's going to happen. And as infrastructure starts to fall, it's really going to get pretty bad.
Well, you talked about infrastructure falling. We're also potentially going to see a change in the guard in the highest levels of American government soon.
Right.
We're coming up on an election season. A lot of like heated arguments happening in the public forum. We might have a new boss. All of us might have a new boss, which is
we could have a civil war before that, but I don't know,
man. It's very intense.
Let's keep it to commonalities and not political.
As far as jiu-jitsu goes,
exactly.
I think that one thing I'm seeing some interesting adaptation happen. I'm seeing a lot of jiu-jitsu instructors now finding ways to teach remotely. I'm seeing a greater emphasis, obviously, on solo drilling. I think one thing I don't see enough of, I don't see enough beginner content. So, like, teach your spouse jiu-jitsu.
Right. Yeah.
I don't see enough of that. I don't see enough. Like, how do you teach somebody that's never done jiu-jitsu before, is not athletically inclined towards jiu-jitsu? How do you teach them an armbar?
Right.
I'm trying to figure that out myself, and I'm going to be doing some videos on that. But regardless, I feel like that's going to be somewhere where we can see a lot of content. I feel like maybe Gracie Combatives is going to make a comeback, you know, or have a
that's a pretty interesting point too, because I'll be honest with you, like I don't think that as a black belt or even as a purple belt or even as a higher level belt that I would care to sit down and watch a half an hour technique breakdown and not be able to roll. Like I'd do it because whatever, it's pretty cool, but like I'm not really going to be too killer about it. Like I'm also never going to quit doing jiu-jitsu, so you don't have to worry about losing my interest. The point being is that the people that are interested in that are like your blue belts and your white belts, because I can remember being a blue belt and a white belt just sitting there like in awe of the glory of watching some person do this armbar and think about what an amazing thing it was. But like now I'm kind of like, whatever,
right,
I just want to roll. You know?
But Kevin, are you confident that you could teach somebody that you live with how to do that armbar?
Oh yeah,
one-on-one.
Yeah, I mean, I could. It's a question of being able. It's a question of being able to do it.
Dude, like I
do it all day long. I mean, I teach private lessons to people that have never done jiu-jitsu before in their lives all day long. Like that's all I do. I mean, I enjoy taking someone that knows nothing. It takes time.
We should make some videos then, bro, because I'm telling you that's the market right now. Like a lot of people are now trying to figure out how to teach somebody else that doesn't do jiu-jitsu one-on-one, how to teach them step by step how to do these.
That's down the line. I mean, I hope, I'm praying that eventually, whatever happens, we're going to get to a point to where we go back to fucking our world.
We can create our training partners right now.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm just saying.
I understand it. I hope
like that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the positives. Like think about it. If I live with somebody and they don't do jiu-jitsu, and I haven't been able to convince them up through brown belt to do jiu-jitsu, now might be the time. Now might be when I get them.
That's a good point. I like that. I get lucky. I live with a black belt, so I'm going to be
sorry, Dave.
Let Dave talk.
I was just saying, do you think that after the quarantine, Emil, that people or gym owners will continue to put out as much video content as they are now, or do you think that it'll slow down with teaching the classes now? Because what I was thinking is that all these gym owners putting out all this video content once or twice a day, this is something they could have done the entire time. Like they didn't have to start a week or 2 weeks ago. They should have been doing this a while ago.
That video content is largely unnecessary if you're attending class.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, that being said, having a companion, it's easy enough to record a class that you teach and put it on the internet. I think like Josh does it a lot. Ledoux, he does that quite a bit where he records his classes and he puts them up on Rockfin. I do that sometimes as well on my Rockfin. I've seen other instructors do it. It's not an uncommon thing. It's just now it's the only way to deliver that information.
Well, to everyone's point, you didn't even see people initially weren't creating new stuff. What you saw in the beginning was people like Henzo dropping the paywall on existing content, like he made his online academy free. In fact, the first guy to make specific content was I think Danaher released a home training like a home movement drilling solo DVD on BJJ Fanatics. Yeah. But initially a lot of people were just saying, here's this stuff that's already online that we make and now it's for free
or heavily discounted.
Or heavily discounted. Like BJJ Fanatics did like a 40-something% discount on all of their DVDs online.
Yeah, and the need for it is there. I think what a lot. We had Matt Arroyo on. Matt Arroyo owns my gym, Gracie Tampa South, and he was on my other podcast this morning. We were talking about some things that he's doing to help people and keep interested to put content out there. And I think the biggest reason why gyms are doing it and gyms need to do it and have to do it at this point is to just show that they still care about these guys. To say, hey, look, man, I know you can't come to the gym and you can't keep classes, but I want you to see that I'm working. This isn't ideal. This isn't the perfect situation, but I'm doing everything I can so that somewhat normalcy at like 6 o'clock on Tuesday night when you're supposed to be in a gi class You can go online and watch this group thing we're doing and sit back and do some technique and be a part of the community somewhat you are a part of because he has it interactively. He has it through this program called Zoom where it's an online chat room. So you're watching the big box and then around.
Yeah, Zoom to meeting.
Right. So all the people are in the class. You can see all their faces and write them little messages and shit like that. So it's kind of cool. And it's just showing these people that, hey, look, man, I know you're still paying. And I know we all want to do jiu-jitsu when this gets done with me. If you quit paying me, we're not going to be able to do jiu-jitsu anymore. So if you continue, look, I'm going to put this content out. So I'm doing something to work for you, and maybe they'll appreciate it. Hell, maybe they'll feel guilty about it.
I do think there might be something to, in these sorts of situations, a buddy system. And this might be irresponsible. This might not be the smartest thing to do. But like one thing I've been doing a little bit is I have a training partner, one person. I go train with him. That's the only person I'm training with. It's one extra person I'm being exposed to. But statistically, that's probably it's not going to make a blip on the on that flattening the curve thing. I don't know.
You have to stay at home.
Stay home.
Stay home.
We've got you on tape.
I mean,
that was live, bro.
I'm just saying, I think that in these sorts of situations, during these sorts of, because I'm assuming it's going to happen again at some point in our lifetimes. And once something's happened once, it happens again.
Yeah.
I think that you can go train with one person, in my opinion. That might be irresponsible. That might be dumb, but
I mean,
to that point, some of my old gym owner friends have talked to me about potentially opening up really small, isolated group classes where it's limited to 4 people and the instructor, and so you come in at different times and opening the gym up and seeing if that would be allowed. But there's really. You can only minimize risk so much, before
people are going to start doing jiu-jitsu. You're not going to stop motherfuckers from doing jiu-jitsu. They'll figure out a way.
4 people. I think that's a bit more.
I think four is about the tops. You probably shouldn't have more than that.
Yeah, that's kind of what they came to.
What I saw, I think Avery wrote an article and put it up. I know Kimberly Kane did. I think it was, and put an article on the Jiu-Jitsu Times the other day that cautioned against doing private lessons because it says it defeats the purpose of social distancing because you're intermingling 2 different households, and that's what I read. The article was written by a medical professional that also owns a jiu-jitsu school, and it's a pretty good article, and I didn't read too much.
Yeah, I
that's kind of what I got. Yeah, that's what I got.
Okay, so here's my understanding of it. Again, I don't know much about this, but from reading about it, here's what I understand. The idea is if I'm encountering, let's say, 10 people in a day, those 10 people are potentially susceptible to catching whatever I've got. Because the reality is we don't know how this thing spreads. They're saying airborne. If it's airborne, it doesn't make a difference if we're rolling or having a conversation in person.
Right. It is airborne, by the way. It's found on the air particles. It's not aerosol, and I don't really know what the difference between aerosol and airborne is, but there's apparently aerosol is worse than airborne, but that's the majority of people who catch it.
So I have my limited circle of people that I'm in touch with, or that I'm physically in contact with throughout the day, that I actually interact with in the same airspace, right? So I got at this point 2 coworkers, my wife, and then every couple of days my training partner. That's what, 4 people? I mean, They're saying 10 people, groups of 10 people.
I mean, I'm not going to tell you not to do that, but
it extrapolates out, I think, just because you got 4, but who are are they only dealing with 4 each?
But I'm telling you, I have a feeling that down the road, what's coming is from what my buddy in Spain tells me, that they are on your ass. I mean, this is Spain also too, and he lives in Madrid, which is a more metropolitan city, so they're up your ass all over the place. There's nothing but streets and avenues. But he says that you can go outside to the store, you can go outside to walk your dog, but if you leave your house, you have to show your freaking your lease agreement that you live there. This is your address. And you have to be you have to go to the store and come right back again, or they'll fuck with you. So that's just what I heard. And that's what I think is coming to the States pretty soon.
If it does,
Dave,
I'll be responsible.
That's the way it's like here in Montreal now. As of yesterday, you're either going to the grocery store, you're going to the pharmacy, you're walking your dog, or why the fuck are you out?
Yeah,
we have like more and more police on the road now, and I mean that seems like the way it is in most lockdown European countries. And it's gonna go city by city. Like I don't know about the States, like if it can be nationalized.
We've been doing it. We've been doing it on a state by state basis.
Yeah, it's mostly state by state, but it's never going to work if we go state by state in the U.S. You know,
No,
it has to be nationalized.
Yeah, I think that who knows what's going on, Dave. I don't want to get.
I mean, we like ideally that there's a lot of jokes about like the National Guard on the streets, but that's the way it would happen.
They're already deployed in New York City and in California. I think
it's funny because I live on a barrier island off the coast of New Jersey, and a lot of people have been saying they might close the bridge and it'll just go full escape from New York. And I have an eye patch for if it happens. I'm gonna grow my hair out, eye patch, just be Snake Plissken.
What the hell's his name? Kurt Russell?
Yeah, Kurt Russell.
Kurt Russell.
Do it.
No, that's the plan. I'll have two functioning eyes, but no one will know. And I'll have a really cool nickname.
You know that's gonna fuck with your depth perception, right?
Exactly.
Oh yeah, but like I'll look so badass though. Like you pick and choose your battles.
Does anyone know what the actual function of an eye patch is? Just so we can completely blow the topic and get
just to hide your eye, lack of eye.
Emil, anybody, any takers? So it was designed. That's why you always see pirates wearing eye patches. It's not because they poke their eyeballs out.
When you go below deck.
When you go below deck into the dark. They did a
MythBusters about that.
Did they do a MythBusters about that?
They did do one. Yeah.
Defunct.
I'm not sure. I don't remember. I think I turned it off because I didn't want to know the answer.
Right. You can keep your eyes don't register. Your eyeballs don't dial. I wanted it to be true too.
Yeah, Dave, we here in the States love to shy away from reality.
Yeah, exactly. Let's not talk about the ensuing deal. Let's talk about that eye patch thing. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
Dave, talk to us. What's down the pike for Grappling Industries, assuming this all resolves itself in the not too distant future?
If it resolves itself not in the too distant future, then I would imagine that we're still going to continue to try to grow. I mean, I plan to keep growing the moment we get back out there. Like already we were about to add like 5 or 6 more countries right before everything got canceled. I had those posters in the pipeline, and they kind of like got thrown out now with a lot of other stuff that we have. What?
You can keep the posters.
Just change the dates.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't think the Swedish would actually like respect the fact me putting on a Swedish poster right now. But right now, it's like we don't really have anything in the pipe. Like I was saying before, you can't really launch anything right now. And if you do post anything poster related or send out any, like yesterday, like one of our scheduled emails like slipped through, like it didn't get deleted. And the response we got to it was like, "Are you guys fucking idiots?" you know, stuff like that. You know, the poster went out to Washington State of all places. So I mean,
yeah, I saw a couple of advertisements for like jiu-jitsu tournaments. I'm like, "Are you out of your mind now? That ain't happening, Bubba."
I knew a lot of people were upset at you for the Arnolds.
Yeah,
I'll get to the Arnolds in a second, but like 2 days ago, like we were trying to sell lifetime passes because right now the only sales avenue we have right now is lifetime passes, and someone called me a selfish bastard for trying to sell lifetime passes because we were selling them something that might not exist in 6 months when people really need their money for food. And I thought that was like really intense, you know, like like I'm trying to sell a good for income, and you're calling me a selfish bastard. I'm not begging you for something. I'm selling something.
I tell you, man, I did the same thing. I sold a bunch of private lessons to some clients, some clients, and I gave them some good rates for some private lessons coming up in the future. And like I'm in my mind, I'm also thinking to myself, God, I hope that you guys get the Yeezys, but at the same time, I'm also like, that's why I'm selling them to you at discounted prices because hey, you know.
But that's the thing. Every business business right now needs to continue to make sales.
Yes.
I mean, we need
Yes.
some type of minimum number of sales to still cover things that are not going to disappear from the expense.
This will not be the chaotic. This will be a bad thing. This is going to be a very horrible time for us and our country and for the entire planet, not just our country. But the good news is all of us are going to be in the same boat. You know, we're all going to be fucked. We're all going to have a horrible, horrible summer. The next 3 months are going to be horrible, unbearable. But when we get through it, life will have to go back on again.
To be fair, it might be a smidge more difficult for Kevin specifically because he lives in Florida and a lot of idiots are going to be spring breaking regardless. Like you were telling us last week, like it's just been a nightmare. Like
we had
day in
38 police officers come down with coronavirus. They're all quarantined right now. It's freaking this. They're like when I saw that clip come up on the news, I was like, oh my god, it's starting to get real. I got friends.
Hey,
What's that?
Do you see the voiceover version?
Of which one?
Oh, I saw that
They
one.
need a voiceover on that clip.
Oh my god. Of the
amazing.
beach? Of the beach?
yeah.
Oh no, I haven't seen that. I have to watch that.
I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Please do. I mean,
did everyone see that video of those guys getting interviewed? And it's like, look, if it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. I can't let it ruin my spring break.
That's the one with the voiceover. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm telling you, I told Kevin this last week. Like literally, I was moments because I have a concussion problems and my head's kind of been fucking with me the last which makes this so much more fun. I'm dealing with that shit right now for the last couple of weeks. So like I'm a little like I'm always crazy, but I'm like a little the tweakiness is like a little bit higher than normal. And when I'm telling you, when I saw those kids on the beach during spring break, the thought ran through my mind. I was like, all right, this is it. This is the way you're gonna go out. You're gonna get a bat. And you're gonna run out to the beach, and you're just gonna start cracking skulls, and they'll eventually just in sheer numbers they'll overtake you, but you'll make enough of a point that everybody will have to go home.
They'll have to call in you'll mow through the police, and they got to call in the National
I'll
Guard.
probably get about 15 or 20 of them, and eventually they'll get me, but like they'll know I was there, like zombies, right?
It's funny. Like
I got a good question.
Yeah, no, you go.
I got a good question for Dave. That's Jiu-Jitsu related because this is interesting.
I had to answer the Arnold's question, but
no. Go ahead, man. I don't even know what the hell happened.
I don't know what the Arnold's question was though.
Emil, you were asking like what happened.
All I said was I heard you guys got a lot of internet hate about still holding the Arnolds and that whole situation.
That was your last event, right? Like that was
not the last event actually.
There's not another one.
There was 6 more. Okay. So the weekend the Arnolds happened, I was actually in Amsterdam doing Grappling Industries Amsterdam, and then the week after there were 5 Grappling Industries. There was Adelaide, South Australia, Houston, Texas, Minneapolis, Minnesota, New Hampshire, and then the biggest of them all, I was in London doing the London Grappling Industries, awesome, which I mean, London was blowing up with cases as that was happening. So, the question was about the Arnolds. Like we received hate for it. Well, the first thing we have to address with the Arnolds is that like our event was never shut down, right? Like the trade show was shut down, so that's the first thing. Once the trade show,
so like
no, I know what you're saying. So the trade show was shut down, so a lot of people first didn't want to compete in the tournament because there was no trade show, and a lot of these competitors were saying the reason I registered for the Arnolds was because I also wanted to go to the trade show. Now I couldn't predict that. I mean, I thought you were coming to my tournament and your divisions both have 40 people in it. I thought this was exactly what you would have wanted from a jiu-jitsu tournament. This was the biggest jiu-jitsu tournament ever to be held in Ohio, still after the pullouts that would come from this. So I thought, okay, for a jiu-jitsu competitor, this is your dream tournament if you're from Ohio. So once the trade expo got shut down, then it's like people started swarming. Some people were like, oh, I don't want to go if there's no trade expo. And then we kind of became the messenger of the expo because the news was publishing stories at the same time that the expo wasn't talking about. So the media were like, there won't be any spectators allowed. And the Arnolds were telling us that we're allowed to have spectators. But then at first they're like, oh, you're not allowed to have spectators. So then we tell everyone you're not allowed to have spectators. Then there's a giant influx of questions. Oh, can my wife come? Oh, my kid is competing. Are you saying I can't be the guardian of my kid? Oh, how about coaches? And it's like, oh, what the fuck is all this? You know, like this is a lot of questions, and we were only given so much information as well. So we have to go back to Arnold's. We have to ask them, hey, how about these answers to these questions? Then they give us a new list of answers. We bring those out. Okay, family members are allowed, coaches are allowed. And then the next day, again, the governor of Ohio is like, no. There's no spectators allowed at the Arnold's. You know, if the Arnold's do it, we're going to reinforce what we said with the Arnold's, that there was no spectators. We're going to use force if needed. And then the people started emailing us again. Oh, but, you know, this is what the governor said, but you guys are saying differently. And I'm only telling you what the Arnold's is telling me. And I'm meanwhile in the Netherlands. So
Right.
it really made for a confusing time. At the end, like from my understanding, it was really only 3 teams that pulled out of the Arnold's. Everyone else still competed, and some people didn't show up. They didn't even tell us. So by the end of like the 1,100 people that signed up, I think 150 pulled out. Maybe 30 from one gym, 25 from another gym, 20 from another gym, and then just miscellaneous competitors that were traveling from distances that didn't want to get tangled up with that. I think the moment like Governor DeWine came out and said like we have this coronavirus scare that would be at the expo, he didn't really explain it that well. From my understanding, the trade expo was shut down because all those displays, all the supplements, all the product was coming in most likely from China. Also, the trade show is what draws people from around the world and has everyone clumped together in the exposition room in the halls. I think he wanted to remove that, but by removing that, he was very unclear, and it created like confusion in the jiu-jitsu community as well. But from my standpoint, unless we were shut down, why would we stop our event? From a business standpoint, I can name a couple of reasons why we didn't shut down, but then people are just going to criticize me for being greedy or something. One of the reasons for it was we had already collected 100,000 in sales for just the jiu-jitsu tournament, and we had like another 15,000, I think, for the Gordon Ryan seminar collected. I mean, that's kind of a lot of money to cancel an event over something that we haven't been canceled for. Right. So we were clearly going to run the event unless we were shut down by the state or the entire Arnold's was shut down. Meanwhile, while this was happening between the Arnold's and the state, the Arnold's was telling us we were still good, and the state was saying we were still good. So I just didn't understand where the criticism was coming from. I think the next part of the criticism that came from people was the people that didn't want to compete in the tournament, some of these people wanted refunds. And since the tournament was still going on, we were issuing coupon codes. Because
when was that tournament?
That was March 7th and 8th. So on the 7th, we had like the adults, the absolutes. On the 8th, we had the kids. And in the afternoon, we had the Gordon Ryan seminar.
Right.
None of it was shut down. So basically, the last piece of criticism, which I was saying, is like some people wanted refunds because they said, oh, we're not going to compete in this tournament. It's most likely going to be canceled. And we're like, it's not canceled. It's still happening. And our policy is like, if you just don't want to participate in a tournament that's still happening, you'll receive a coupon code. You'll still get to compete in any events of ours.
Right.
But
you're just not going to get your money back.
But no, not for this particular event. It's still happening. And I mean, last I checked, your division had like 25 people in it. I mean, it doesn't get better than that. So that's really the story behind the Arnold's when you consider everything involved.
I mean, who exactly? Real quick, who exactly? You say like you're hearing from the Arnold's. Could you give us some more information on who exactly? How exactly you deal with and communicate with the Arnold's and the people there? Like, do you have a point person, or is it just an office that you?
So I left Marcos Flores in charge of the Arnold's deal. I never really wanted to take care of the Arnold's deal. I don't really want to take care of any deal at Grappling Industries any longer. So I kind of let the directors take care of the deals inside of their own country. So Marcos will take care of the Arnold's. Leo Cordon in Europe is the one that was taking care of the Geneva collaboration that we had going on. Benjamin Hodgkinson is the one that's going to take over the Arnold's for next year, which isn't even announced yet. No one knows that, but I'm taking the Arnold's in Australia next year as well. In the States, it's Marcos Flores. So Marcos Flores was going through 2 guys at the Arnold's, one of them being Bob. Bob is pretty much the owner of the Arnold's. Like, it's his event. It has Arnold's name on it, but Arnold only deals with Bob. So Bob was the guy who was giving us the major details, or at the end was telling us what was okay. We have someone else there who's like the middleman between us and Bob. But at the end, it was pretty much Bob being present to everyone.
Shout out to Marcos, though. I've known Marcos for years. He's an awesome dude.
Yeah. Misunderstood guy, but he's good.
Yeah, Marcos is cool, man. I've known him for a long, long time.
I consider him, me and him are like bad cop, good cop. So if you don't like me, you'll probably like him. If you don't like him, you'll probably like me. So I feel like this applies. Like me and him are completely opposite people. Like
he's definitely a little rough around the edges. He seems a little more polished.
From my understanding, he's everyone's favorite asshole. So
yeah,
wow,
that's definitely a good portrayal of him.
Kevin is I hope I never meet him then, because Kevin, you're out of a job because you're my favorite asshole.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. You wouldn't be saying that if I had my beard. I like much meaner.
I know. I'm not as scared of you right now. Emil, you have any?
Everyone's least favorite asshole.
Dangerous place to be. Emil, you have anything?
I mean, so for me, it was interesting. Like, I was getting the information. I had a lot of people reaching out to me because of the fact that they know that I write about you guys pretty often. So I had a lot of people ask me questions, and basically my attitude was, as far as I know, the tournament's still happening, and my plan was I was going to wait, to decide whether or not I was even going until like the night before, because things were just changing so rapidly. I felt like you guys were pretty transparent, but on the same token, I get people panicking because they're hearing about how this coronavirus, is spreading, and at that point they had even less information than they do now. And one criticism that I heard of you guys, and again, I went to the tournament, I had a great fucking time. So, like, I'm not saying anything, but this is something I heard from many people, was that they were upset that you guys were not offering the refund as an option, namely because of the fact that there was a reason outside of people's control that was causing them to not want to attend the tournament. Now, the tournament was still happening. You guys don't offer refunds for tournaments that are still happening. I get that policy. One thing that I've heard, it's interesting. It's almost like a good thing and a bad thing at the same time, is that Grappling Industries has a very rigid, almost industrial rules, like way that they do things. Like everything, you go into smooth comp, you're in smooth comp. Your day is very much mapped out. You know what time you're up. But on the same token, I feel like sometimes it's difficult to deal with that if you have sudden changes like this. But I do think you guys are still better than the IBJJF, so there's that.
I think so. To address that, I think the problem is how people's their emails came across. Like if you're saying to us, I don't want to come to this tournament because the trade expo is canceled, then that doesn't warrant a refund compared to a coupon code. No one really at first was presenting it as like, oh, I'm scared of the coronavirus. It was really like, oh, there's no trade expo or the whole thing is canceled, because originally it made it sound like the whole thing is canceled. The media made it sound like the trade expo being canceled meant the entire Arnold's was canceled. So that created the first influx of people being like, oh, the event is canceled. Can I have my money back? And then here we are being like, well, you didn't read the entire article. The one I read as well, which was the one that you're pointing to, it said, no, the sporting events can still happen. I can understand the fright of people, but it wasn't the way they were presenting it. Right. As of now, people who don't want to participate in the closer events, all those registrations have been extended for refunds. So you can get any event of ours refunded right now. But back then, it was like they didn't really say, I don't want to compete in this tournament because I'm scared of coronavirus.
You're offering refunds now? What was that last piece?
Yeah, so any OR tournaments right now are offering refunds. Like we've already of the 30 events we canceled right. 30 events. We postponed, I think, 3 or 4 so far. But
Right.
those 3 or 4 that we postponed into late July, that means
Well,
all
you
the
know-
deadlines are fresh, so you can get those refunded as well.
That just makes sense because if you have the event and the event is still going and the event that tell like not you, the people that are actually running the event tell you no, the event is still go. If you cancel the event now, you're on the hook for whatever results from that.
But again, it's also like the coupon code isn't anything, right? Like you can have whatever tournament you want. Like one person complained to me a couple of days ago that they had received the coupon code for the Arnolds, but the reason they don't want the coupon code is because they only do that one Grappling Industries tournament a year. The rest of the year they compete at the IBJJF. And I was like, okay, but that's not really my fault. You can choose any
right.
Grappling Industries tournament you want to
Right.
compete
There's
at.
another one. Yeah, we'll have another one you can go to. Right?
Yeah,
It's
we have
not-
another
it's not
Arnold's
one.
if you want
Use
to
it
do
at
one
the next
year.
Arnold.
What?
Use it at the next Arnold.
They could use it at the next Arnold's if they want. They could use it in Cleveland or Columbus or Michigan or Illinois, whatever they want. It doesn't matter to me. They can go to Europe and use it. But it was this idea that, like, for some people, the coupon code is kind of like we're stealing from them. Whereas
Right.
if, like, you signed up for a tournament, you dropped out of the tournament, we left you with a tournament of your choice now.
Yeah,
And, like,
good
we're
Lord.
and
Could you
I mean,
imagine ever getting a refund from an already pre-existing IBJJF tournament? Jesus Christ!
Some
They
people,
wouldn't
some,
even give you the
some people
discount code.
some people say that IBJJF has given out refunds
Yeah, I've heard
for
that too.
dropouts, but it's
I've heard
really like-
unicorns exist too, but I have yet to see
Look,
definitive
like,
proof of it.
the director of
Oh,
Grappling
I asked
Industries.
the wrong guy. I know you got one off screen.
The director of Grappling Industries Australia was in New York. He flew from Melbourne to New York for 2 weeks. He was going to do grappling. He was going to do IBJJF New York. I think it was in Nogi Pans that year in like September, October, whatever it is. His appendix blew. He emailed like IBJJF a week before, and they said no. Like, and they left his name in the tournament. And I've heard about that from a couple of people where the name doesn't even come out of the brackets. The person doesn't get a refund, and they still get called at the tournament on the microphone. Hey, can I get Benjamin Hoskins into the pit? Benjamin Hoskins is not there. He had his appendix blow out. So I've heard the people say that they've received refunds for one reason or another from my BGGF, but I think again, there's so many stories I have of people not receiving a refund for anything. So it's really hard to say. I mean, they don't really have a clear policy on it. So I have to give myself props that on the front page of each event website page, there is a policy at least.
Well, from a business standpoint, man, like you got to do what you got to do. You know, they didn't cancel the event. I can relate to that. I can understand. You know, there's some people that'll say, oh, you know, you weren't. But at that point, there wasn't really much real knowledge of what was going on. I don't even think we have addressed it nationally at that point at the seventh.
At around that time, I firmly remember Fox News was still saying, "Oh, this is just
people were still saying it was a hoax,
a bad flu that'll blow over. Everyone's overreacting."
The NBA had closed. I mean, I know that Seth Daniels was still trying to put on events. So at that time, it wasn't really that. You know, wasn't really. Oh my God, this is the apocalypse coming. It was just kind of like, what is this thing? We don't really know what's happening.
I don't think that whole apocalyptic feeling still happened for like at least 10 more days.
Right. Yeah, we had plenty.
Because like I remember on the 12th, March 12th, I was in the British Museum in London, and that was the first time I got word that Ireland was closing down before everyone else was closing down.
Yeah.
So I lost the Irish venue. What?
Said luck of the Irish.
Luck of the Irish. So Dublin closed down like that. And then I remember that afternoon, Boris Johnson in the UK was coming out to give a speech, and many people thought he was going to announce a gathering ban. And contrary to that, he announced that making bans on gatherings was not going to help stop the spread as much as just basic healthy conditions of washing your hands, not touching your face.
Right.
So we still got to have our London event 2 days later.
Correct. What's wrong with these people, man? I swear to God, dude.
But it was interesting because at the Arnold's, more people dropped out of the Arnold's due to coronavirus than any of the events the week after, or even the next day in the Netherlands. So of the 6 events that would come after the Arnold's, none of them had as big drop-offs as the Arnold's. Yeah. And then after that weekend, so maybe it was, I guess, March 16, March 17. That's I guess when shit would start hitting the pan, because maybe on March 12th or 11th, I think that's when Trump closed the borders to Europe. And it was still kind of like people were kind of confused. Why is Trump closing the borders to Europe and not the UK? And then like within 5 or 6 days, a week
16th, the 16th, they closed the restaurants here in Tampa, bars and restaurants. I think on the 14th or 15th, I think was when they closed it. No, Wednesday of last week is when they closed the bars and restaurants in Tampa on the 18th.
When I flew London to Montreal on the 15th, because the rest of Europe is closed off from flying directly to the States now, basically my whole flight was filled with Americans. So
Yeah.
the Americans were basically flying to Canada and then bouncing over since our border was still open with you.
Right.
Clearly that's changed now as well, because I think Canada only has 3 active airports at the moment going to the States, and it's not going anywhere else. But at that point, you could tell like everyone was rushing to the UK to bounce over to Canada.
How long have you been in quarantine for now? Or not quarantine? Have you guys?
I guess since that Sunday. I guess since the 15th. So today's like 10 or 11 days.
Yes, 10 days.
Yeah, 10 days.
My friend Gabby was doing a semester in Spain, and she actually even competed at a London Jiu-Jitsu tournament while she was over there. And they pulled the plug on the whole thing right in the middle of it. And so like she chronicled her odyssey and trying to get back to the States through the airport system in Spain. And it was nightmarish, like people in full like bodysuits. No one was saying anything. Yeah. People were running from people that sneezed. Like it was.
Well, it's weird too, because like the moment I got off the ramp in Montreal, like so you get off the plane, you get down that ramp, and then off the ramp there seems to be a clutter of people, and at the end of the clutter is basically 10 officers, each one like stopping a person like a meter away from them and asking them questions about symptoms, taking their temperature, then telling them they have to self-isolate, and then moving them on. It was just pretty weird. I've never seen that before, clearly.
Yeah,
Emil, how have things really cracked down by you too much, or have you?
I mean, yeah, like we have a stay-at-home order in the state of Ohio, which means that it's basically an unofficial version of what Dave's describing. We're not allowed to leave our houses. We're not allowed to, pretty much we just go to the grocery store, go to the pharmacy, and then if you work in a essential field, you can do that.
Are you allowed to go out in your yard?
Yeah. You're allowed to go outside. You're allowed to go outside.
Right. I'm just curious. Right.
You're allowed to go outside for a walk if you want. You're allowed to go for a bike ride.
Yeah.
But like, you're not allowed to be
congregating.
Again, I don't know, like if a police officer saw me real close to somebody, if they'd say something. I don't
right. Hey.
at the end of the day, I go to work in the morning. I come home, hang out with my wife. I have not really trained much because I'm kind of a couch potato when I'm not training, but like I'm gonna probably start doing a lot of solo stuff, and I'm losing my mind here, honestly.
Yeah, I'm
yeah. I've done like I try to do like I have one of those indoor pull-up bars, so whenever I normally just walk from my room to the kitchen in order to make food, and every time I pass under the door I have to do 5, and I think I end up doing like 70 within a day just because of all the walking I have to do. So the rest of me will atrophy, but in the coffin you'll notice that I have huge lats. So like overall this will be a net positive for me, even if it means the death of civilization as we know it.
Your ankle lock game will get a lot better with those big lats.
I can't talk about leg lock. I was actually I did the NJ Fed and I ended up tapping to a leg lock. And just because everyone in my gym is mean, specifically my friend Ruben, I'm calling you out. He has given me like metric tons of shit every day. Like I think he DM'd me today, like calling me an asshole for tapping to a leg lock one time.
What kind of leg lock?
It was like a Kyotera footlock from like Reverse Daily. Yeah, I know. It happened really fast, and my ankle popped, so I like yelped a bit, and the ref called it. So technically, I didn't tap. It was like a verbal tap, I guess.
You yelped to that?
Yelp.
Yeah, it happened fast.
Could you recreate that yelp for us? Could we hear that again? Don't do that, Kev.
It was like in the back of my throat. No one wants to hear it. It would just when I'm editing this, it'll look like some weird like monster invasion in the audio.
It would never make the end cut if we did this. None of this content will be in the cut.
Ruben's gonna watch this and just see Emil go, "You tapped to that," and he's just gonna pee his pants.
There's gonna be a big blue dot over Emil's head through this whole interview. Now, man, I don't know what happened, man. Like your face just got cut out through the whole thing.
Oh my god!
Well, dudes, man, I think I'm gonna go back to playing video games, man.
All right. Well, I'll wrap things up. I think I got a few more questions for Dave. Kevin's tapping out early, but he didn't.
I'll hang out for a minute. Go ahead.
Yeah, Dave. Just like God, reliving that traumatic memory kind of messed with my brain a little bit. I gotta go back in the vault. I guess just on a lighter note. Well, actually, I had a little theory about why some people might be a little hesitant to accept coupons, and it relates to everyone here is familiar with the Fire Festival, right?
I love the story of the Fire Festival.
It's amazing. It's amazing, and I love that in jiu-jitsu we've had multiple mini fire festivals that no one cares about, like Metamoris and Substars.
Just as an event promoter, I love paying attention to events that collapse themselves. So Fire Festival being like the biggest event to ever collapse. Like I gave it a lot of attention.
You just uncorked a good bottle of wine and watched the flames.
That was like a worldwide economic event when that thing went down. That's how bad that event tanked. It actually it fucked up a lot of shit. Like markets suffered because of that.
But I only say that just because one of their immediate solutions to some of the negative PR was offering people the opportunity, instead of a refund, you could ride it out and have tickets for the next Fire Festival.
Yeah.
And while I'm not like a lot of people will immediately go to, oh, you're offering this promise of something that might not happen because it's safe for you.
So right off the bat, like anytime someone's like, well, when will I be able to use this coupon? The fact is, Grappling Industries has such distribution that we're usually within the same region like 4 or 5 times a year. Last year, we were the only brand and the first time ever by any brand to produce more jiu-jitsu tournaments than the IBJJF in an annual year. And we produced 30 more events than they did. And this year, we were trying to produce as many as IBJJF and NAGA combined, except clearly that's not going to happen anymore. But it's still possible for next year.
You might still already have more events just because they're also canceling their stuff.
Yeah, I mean, but at the same time, like we needed all those months to try to combine those two brands up to have more shows in them. But the point is, like, if we go to like some place, let's say Idaho, and you get a coupon code from us, we're gonna be back in that region like 3 times that year. It might not be in your state, but we'll be in like an hour and a half away somewhere else. There is no Fire Festival concept here. Like, it's not an annual event where it happens once a year, and it's really up to you to like hold on. Like, you have lots of opportunities with us. And again, like, this is all clearly stated, like on the front page of the website, like 3-4 paragraphs down. Like, this goes back to something I've said a long time ago. It's like people just don't read anything when they register for tournaments. They think, okay, I'll register in my weight class, in my age division, in my belt division, and everything will figure itself out. I mean, you don't even know when the weigh-in time is. A lot of people email about when the weigh-in time is. That's the paragraph above the paragraph about the refunds, you know?
Right.
So it's like nothing is read. You don't know the rules. You don't know when the tournament is. You don't know when the venue is. I have people sometimes sending us Instagram messages, direct messages, asking us about what the email is or what the website is to register for our tournaments. I mean, it goes to show that like the Google function or the scrolling around a website for 2 minutes, it's not really completely there still with people.
Very difficult.
I
mean, if it happens at our tournament, I clearly imagine it happens at everyone's tournament.
Man, I've actually reffed for Grappling Industries once for Marcos, and I ref a bunch of tournaments here locally, and there's nothing dumber than a fucking tournament.
Some people might not be familiar with it as well.
Right,
like,
I get
typically
it.
the parents.
I don't like it when the referees don't know the rules, though.
We were talking. Who were we on when we were talking about all the variant rule? I think it was Josh, where we were talking about like event promoters not like sometimes they just don't inform the refs properly or the competitors.
It happens 100%. I've been on events like that.
Beautiful, large panel that has the rules crystal clear. You can see it from across the room, and yet somehow I've now had twice that refs from a specific country, South American country, did not understand that certain things were legal and I got yelled at for it. I'm just saying. It's not your fault. It's not your fault.
I've used the argument that I think I've written essays on this subject, to be honest, that refereeing in jiu-jitsu just sucks generally.
Oh yeah.
And to say, and I don't even think this is something you can use against one tournament. Like, I don't like to complain against IBJJF that they have shittier refs than we do. And then other people are going to say, oh, no, you guys have shittier refs than they do, or, oh, they're the gold standard, or we're all using the same referees, guys. I mean, we all use the same referees, and we all use the people that are available to referee. It's also much different to referee a match, clearly, as I'm probably sure Gallagher will tell you, than actually watching it. You only get to watch it once. You get the phase out thing going on after a couple matches or a couple of hours.
That's a very good point, Dave, because that's one of the things that I always say when I'm reffing matches is that one of the hardest parts of being a referee is getting to the point where you're like, oh, wow, this is so awesome. This is such a good match. You're like, oh, fuck, what the fuck just happened? You know what I mean? You're not there as a spectator. You are there to watch the match skeptically and to understand what's happening when and where. That's why ref decisions are so hard, because at the end of the day, when you're standing up there, you have to think back and go, Jesus Christ, like neither one of these guys really did a whole lot. And I really wasn't watching too much, so I'm just going to put somebody's hand up, and there you go. Sorry.
I would love it if next time you're reffing, you see some crazy move and you just go, oh, that was so sick. And some coach goes, was that legal? And you're just like, I don't know, but it was. Did you see it? It was so sick, dude.
But
my favorite moments was refereeing our mutual friend Kevin Bradley.
Joe Hacken. Shout out to Joe. Shout out to Too Tall Hacken over at Buffalo United Martial Arts.
So Joe Hacken was going up against one of my main training partners, and Hacken starts the match out and goes right to Burt Reynolds' guard. And I see it, and I'm like, that's not going to go well for you, buddy. Because this guy has been dealing with this shit since he was a white belt. Because he's been having me do it to him since he was a white belt. I was watching it. You see in the video me just giggling the entire match. I scored it.
There you go. All right, now I think I'm done. Kev, you want to give everybody a freaking.
Guys, any closing words for the greater jiu-jitsu community, or just stuff you got going? I mean, Dave, I know you're probably going to be stuck at home.
So
how about this? How about we all go around and say one thing positive about what could come of this and things that we can look forward to in the future?
The turnpike isn't as crowded. Next.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think that we can talk about how life can move on and how maybe when we get done with this, we'll have turns.
Well, I think we talk about what we possibly have going on in the future. Just think about positive things in the future. So Dave, anything at all in specifics?
Well, I've been on a lot of podcasts this week, and I still have a lot more to be on. But I keep trying to finish on the same point that being involved in the stock market and just seeing the way things are going right now. I know the feeling of when your company takes massive hits. Like it happened to me 4 years ago when I was expanding to the West Coast and I had my trailer stolen. I wasn't in the same position I am now. So back then was super rough. I was on the cusp of bankruptcy, and then we managed to get through it. And now we're here at a completely different level. That's non-imaginable. I could imagine being at that position back then in the current times and how it would be so much different now. I know that creates the number one reason for usually suicides, economic, just collapse. people losing their businesses, just absolute depression during this type of moment. So if there's anything I would say, it's like with all these gym owners out there saying, keep paying for your membership and stuff like this, you should also act like the mentors that you supposedly act that you're supposed to be. You should be able to take your students' phone calls, or you should be able to call your students and make sure they're okay. This is a good chance for us all to actually call our friends, call our family, making sure people are all right. And also for those of you that don't want to answer such phone calls, there's a lot of great hotlines that can actually take your emotional distress phone calls or your suicide tips calls. That's where I would end it on, is just like, I don't really want to see that number jump. I've had like a suicide in my direct family that we had to face. And it's fucking shit to deal with. So if there's anything I would finish on, it's like, make sure your buddies are fine.
Yeah, be good to one another, guys. Emil, you got anything?
It's not as happy a note as Gallagher wanted.
But I don't mean it to be. That's I don't mean happy. I mean like positive, because that's something that we definitely need. We need someone to be like, hey, look after your fellow guys, because we definitely have like realism is what we're looking for, like a positivity, but like a realistic understanding of some bad things are coming.
Last year, suicide came up into the top 10 reasons for death last year in the United States. And this year it's assumed to be rising to number 9 on the list. It's very potentially could also reach number 8 at this rate. So, I don't really like quoting your president that much, but he did say like the cure could be worse than the problem itself. But when I think about that, I think about the number of suicides, especially with the way the stock market is going, the number of layoffs, the number of people who are actually getting fired, not just laid off at the current moment. And the number of businesses that will crash. Like I was saying before, 1 in 5 gyms, possibly 1 in 4 gyms are not going to open. There's going to be a lot of bars and restaurants that don't reopen in other locations, or other restaurants and bars will replace them. But for people who invested everything they had in that, especially when they have a family and they're not going to be able to provide for that, I can understand the depression that they're going to have and the low points that they'll reach.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Emil, you got any words for your fellow athletes and just other pros out there that are kind of dealing with the same things you are? Or?
I can't wait to get back, man. I can't wait to get back on the mats. That's thinking about that's what's keeping me going. Like, it's like I'm losing my fucking mind here, but the reality is that this is temporary. Everything is temporary.
Sure.
Right. I said this on I think I said this on ending one of my more recent articles, and I think I might have said it last week when we had Chris in the Staying Sane emergency episode that we needed to do in order to keep our noggins on straight. But we will live we're all going to live to do this again. That's how we got to go into this. We're all going to live to choke each other out again, to do scissor sweeps, develop our guard game. And yes, even if you're me, tap to foot locks that you shouldn't tap to. I just also I found the first text that Ruben sent me right after the tournament, like it was a few days later, and it was just, you disgust me. So that's the positive. It's not positive, but yeah. You're going to have those people are going to be there for you. Your gym, your buddies, like Dave said, reach out to them. Just because you're not just because you're not training together doesn't mean you can't make sure everyone's doing all right. So, those training buddies that you might not talk to outside the gym, reach out to them, see that they're doing okay. Yeah, just basically a lot of good stuff. Kev, you got anything, or you ready to go?
Yeah, man. I just wanted to reiterate a little what Dave said. I like the thing you were talking about when you said a lot of these gym owners that pretend that act like they're the mentors of their gyms need to continue to be those mentors outside of the gym and check in with their people. Check in, because all of us know that jiu-jitsu is about more than just learning how to jiu-jitsu. It's about molding someone's character and watching them overcome obstacles and get better at life and learn how to deal with things. And a part of that as an instructor is becoming a part of that person's journey in that regard. So we learn our students' ways. So, be cool, man. Reach out to them, make sure they're okay, check in with them, be that person, that mentor figure that helps them through this dark place, and use jiu-jitsu for the greater good. Because just like Emil said, we're all going to get through this, and we're all going to have something to come back to when it's done. So anyway.
All right. Well, this has been a really enlightening and, in a way, uplifting episode of the Jiu-Jitsu Times podcast. I have been Kevin Bradley, joined by my co-host, Kevin Gallagher, guests Emil Fisher and Dave Aguzzi. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Boom. See you guys.